Imagine yourself transported to an age of splendor and conquest, where great empires ruled vast lands and faith shaped the destiny of men. At the heart of this historical scene unfolds the story of a young man of noble origin, whose fate was sealed not by swords or crowns, but by an unwavering faith and a keen intelligence. This young man is Daniel, a character whose life is a testimony of courage, wisdom, and divine faith. The setting is the Kingdom of Judah, a nation on the brink of a drastic transformation. The sky, tinged with hues of red and orange, serves as a prelude to an event that would change the course of history: the siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonian Empire. Under the command of Nebuchadnezzar, one of the greatest conquerors of his time, the imposing Babylonian army advances, promising not only territorial conquest, but the beginning of an era of captivity for the people of Judah. Among the captives, we find Daniel, a young man of royal or noble lineage, whose future, until then full of promises, is suddenly plunged into uncertainty and despair. Torn from his land, taken to a foreign nation, and subjected to a different culture and beliefs, what could Daniel and his fellow captives expect? But it is in adversity that the character of a man truly reveals himself. Instead of succumbing to despair, Daniel finds in his faith an impregnable fortress. He knows that even in the shadows of exile, the divine presence is his guide and protector. The journey to Babylon, marked by deep reflections, is not only a physical journey, but a journey of faith and inner discovery. Upon arrival, Daniel and his friends are selected to serve at the king's court, a recognition of his abilities, but also a challenge to his faith. Would they be able to remain true to their principles in the face of the temptations and pressures of a strange pagan environment? Daniel's story is a fascinating adventure about endurance, faith, and the ability to influence the course of events, even when all odds are against it. Join us on this incredible journey as we unravel the mysteries, trials, and victories of Daniel, a true hero of the faith whose history resonates through the centuries, inspiring courage and hope to this day. In a twist of fate, the young Daniel, along with his friends, is plucked from his homeland, Jerusalem, and taken captive to the heart of an empire that is synonymous with power and splendor, the magnificent Babylon. But what awaits Daniel and his friends in this city of wonders, famous for its hanging gardens, considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and its imposing tower that challenges the skies? This is not only the beginning of a captivity, it is the beginning of an extraordinary history of faith, intelligence, and influence that transcends the boundaries of an empire. As the city gates open, Daniel and his friends are introduced into a completely new world, a pulsating metropolis in the heart of the Babylonian Empire. The transition from captives to members selected to serve at the court of King Nebuchadnezzar is nothing short of surprising. But what made Daniel and his friends stand out among so many? The answer lies not only in his noble lineage, but in his exceptional wisdom and ability to learn. Imagine the challenge: young foreigners maintaining their faith and identity in a kingdom that is the epitome of pagan culture and religion. The selection to serve at court is not just an honor, it is a test of fidelity and an opportunity to influence the heart of the empire. The education in the language and literature of the Chaldeans is not only academic, it is an immersion in a completely different culture and thought. Daniel and his friends face the challenge of learning while keeping their convictions unwavering. They are put to the test from the beginning, especially when it comes to the dietary rules imposed by the court, which come into direct conflict with their religious practices. Daniel's response to this first trial is nothing short of cunning and reveals his deep faith and intelligence. He proposes a solution that not only honors his faith, but also demonstrates to the Babylonian court the power of his beliefs. The result of this test is a defining moment, not only for Daniel and his friends, but for everyone at court as they witness something extraordinary. This is not just the story of a captivity. It is a narrative about how faith, wisdom, and integrity can triumph in a foreign and sometimes hostile environment. Welcome to Babylon, a metropolis of wonders and wonder, where 4 young Hebrews, captives of a distant land, are facing an unimaginable challenge. This is not just an account of survival in a strange land. It is the story of how Daniel and his friends are plunged into the depths of Chaldean culture and wisdom in an attempt to turn them into perfect Babylonian courtiers. But how do you keep your identity and faith intact when everything around you seeks to shape them into something completely different? Education in Babylon was not for the faint of heart. Imagine being young, far from home, and suddenly immersed in the intensive study of a new language, writing, and a myriad of sciences and arts, all foreign and complex. The Chaldean language and literature, known for their richness and depth, were at the heart of this educational program. Daniel and his friends faced the colossal task of mastering this knowledge in record time, a feat that would challenge even the brightest of students in any era. But why this effort to assimilate these young people to Babylonian culture? The answer is as cunning as it is ambitious. Nebuchadnezzar the king knew that true conquest came not only by force but by the integration of brilliant minds loyal to the administrative machinery of the empire. He sought not only to subdue the conquered peoples, but also to absorb the best of their elites, creating a cultural eclecticism that would strengthen the core of his kingdom. However, this attempt at assimilation found not only willing students, but also young people of unwavering faith. Daniel and his friends, facing the challenge of their lives, showed a cunning that went beyond the intellectual. They committed themselves to learning, absorbing the knowledge offered to them, but without losing the essence of who they were and the God they served. This duality of being able to learn, adapt, and yet hold firm to their religious beliefs and practices is what truly distinguishes them. This period of education in Babylon reveals more than the attempt of an empire to assimilate captives. It shows the power of identity, faith, and intelligence in facing the challenges of assimilation without losing its essence. It is a lesson that even in the most adverse circumstances, it is possible to remain true to oneself and one's principles. Amid the opulence and splendor of the Babylonian court, where delicacies and wines were served in abundance, an unexpected challenge presented itself to Daniel and his friends. This was not a challenge of strength or intellect, but of faith and conviction. The dilemma: the refusal to consume the royal table food, a gesture that could be interpreted as a direct affront to the king himself. But why would Daniel and his friends choose this path of resistance, risking their privileged position and even their lives? The answer lies in the deep faith these young people had. For them, obeying the dietary laws of their religion was not just a matter of custom, but a non-negotiable commitment to their identity and beliefs. The foods offered at the royal table were often consecrated to pagan gods or prohibited by their religious laws, making them unacceptable for consumption. At this time, the conflict between adapting to the new culture and remaining faithful to its beliefs becomes palpable. Daniel's proposal is as bold as his refusal, a simple but revolutionary test. For 10 days, they would feed exclusively on vegetables and water, pure foods that did not contradict their beliefs. At the end of this period, his appearance would be compared to that of the young men who fed on the king's delicacies. It was a calculated risk, based on faith that their adherence to divine principles would not only keep them healthy, but also prove the superiority of their lifestyle. The result of this test defies expectations and transforms the perception of those responsible for the Babylonian court. Not only do Daniel and his friends prove to be healthier and more vigorous than their contemporaries, but they also demonstrate that faithfulness to their principles and their faith has a power that transcends human logic. This seemingly simple story about food choices reveals deep layers of meaning about identity, faith, and the courage to remain true to one's own values in the face of adversity. The decision of Daniel and his friends not only shapes the course of their lives in Babylon, but also inspires us to reflect on the choices we make daily and the power these choices have to define who we are. By rejecting the king's delicacies, these young men were in fact putting at stake their own survival at court. The decision went beyond food. It was a declaration of independence, a refusal to be assimilated by a culture that was not his, a silent but powerful resistance. At the heart of this challenge was the conviction that following divine principles would bring you not only physical health, but also greater mental and spiritual clarity than that provided by the temporal pleasures of the royal table. For 10 days, the world of Daniel and his friends were reduced to vegetables and water, a diet that for many would sound like a direct path to weakness and illness, especially when compared to the rich diet of other young men at court. However, what happens at the end of these 10 days is nothing short of extraordinary. Not only do they survive, they thrive. His appearance, far from denoting weakness or malnutrition, shines with a vitality that surpasses that of all other young people fed by the king's kitchen. This result goes against all expectations and challenges the understandings of the time about nutrition and health. But more than that, it demonstrates the strength of faith in divine protection by offering a powerful lesson in the importance of integrity and trust in higher principles. The experience of Daniel and his friends becomes an unwavering testimony of his faith, a beacon of hope and a proof that even in the most challenging circumstances, it is possible to remain true to himself and his beliefs. This episode not only strengthens them individually, but also sets a precedent for all those around them about the true meaning of strength, health, and divine providence. One night in Babylon, a city where the impossible seemed as real as the gravity-defying Hanging Gardens, King Nebuchadnezzar is ravaged by a dream so disturbing that it shakes the foundations of his reign. This is not a simple nighttime daydream, but a riddle encrypted in the shadows of sleep, so mysterious and enigmatic that not even the king's wisest advisors can decipher it. But what makes this dream so different, so alarming, that it results in a death threat to all the wise men of the court? And how does Daniel, a Hebrew captive, emerge as the only hope not only to save his own life, but also those of the wisest in Babylon? Nebuchadnezzar, a monarch whose power was undisputed, whose word was law, finds himself powerless before an enigma that neither his wealth nor his army nor his wisdom can solve. In a gesture of despair and anger, he decrees the death of all the wise men of the court, a terrible sentence that threatens to consume not only the counselors and soothsayers, but also Daniel and his friends, young men of incomparable wisdom, but still subject to the whim of a troubled king. Daniel's intervention at this critical moment is both an act of courage and faith. With a calm that defies fear, he asks the king what no other dared: time. Time to do what seemed impossible, reveal and interpret the king's dream. But how could Daniel, unlike all other wise men and fortune-tellers, unravel this mystery? The key to this puzzle lies not in human wisdom, but in a divine connection that Daniel confidently flaunts. In a narrative full of suspense and twists, we follow Daniel as he turns to the one place where he seeks answers: his unwavering faith. In a fervent prayer, not only for wisdom but for mercy, Daniel receives not only the dream's interpretation, but also a profound revelation about the future and destiny of empires. This story transcends the miracle of deciphering a dream. It tells us about the possibility of hope in the face of despair, the faith that illuminates the shadows of doubt, and the courage to face absolute power, not with force but with truth. Come with us on this journey through one of the most dramatic episodes in the story of Daniel, where divine intervention, wisdom, and courage intertwine to unveil the challenge of a king's dreams. At a time when dreams were seen as messages from the gods, a powerful king is plagued by night visions that no wise man in his court can decipher. This king is Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of the vast Babylonian Empire, and the dream that disturbs him is as enigmatic as it is alarming. But here comes Daniel, a young captive who not only promises to reveal the dream, but also offer his interpretation. What follows is a story of faith, courage, and a revelation that would change the course of history. Imagine the scene: the gathered Babylonian court, the palpable tension in the air as everyone awaits Daniel's word. It is not only the lives of the court sages that are at stake, but the very authority of Nebuchadnezzar, challenged by a mystery that his gods and soothsayers cannot solve. And then, Daniel speaks. But before revealing the dream and its interpretation, he pauses, crediting the revelation not to his own wisdom, but to the God of heaven, a bold and risky gesture in a land of pagan gods. The dream, as Daniel reveals, is a vision of an immense statue, composed of different metals, from the head of gold to the feet of iron and clay. This image, imposing but unstable, is destroyed by a stone not cut by human hands, which turns into a large mountain and fills the whole earth. But what does that mean? Daniel goes on to explain that the statue represents future kingdoms, each metal symbolizing an empire that would rise and fall, beginning with Nebuchadnezzar's own Babylonian, represented by the head of gold. The stone, on the other hand, symbolizes a divine, eternal, and indestructible kingdom established by God that would eventually surpass all human kingdoms. The revelation is stunning, not only for the accuracy with which it describes the rise and fall of future empires, but also for Daniel's audacity in proclaiming the sovereignty of a single God amid fervent polytheism. This interpretation not only saves Daniel and the court sages, but also establishes Daniel as one of Nebuchadnezzar's most trusted and respected advisors. This episode, full of suspense, faith, and divine revelations, invites us to reflect on the power of dreams and the eternal truths they can reveal. Join us as we delve deeper into this fascinating story, exploring the meaning behind Nebuchadnezzar's dream and how one interpretation changed the fate of an empire. In an empire where the king's word was law and disobedience meant death, three young men find themselves faced with a choice that would define not only their destinies, but also the strength of their faith. This is the tale of Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah, friends of Daniel, who faced literal and figurative fire for their refusal to bow before an immense golden statue, erected by order of King Nebuchadnezzar. This is not just a historical episode. It is a story about courage, conviction, and unwavering belief in something greater than the most powerful of kings. Imagine yourself on the vast plain of Dura in Babylon, where a monumental statue shines under the scorching sun, an image made entirely of gold, erected to symbolize the absolute power and divinity of King Nebuchadnezzar. The order is clear. To the sound of music, everyone should bow down and worship the statue. The penalty for those who disobey? Being thrown alive in the fiery furnace. But Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah refuse. In an act of daring defiance and deep faith, they stand as all-around bow. This decision is not taken lightly. It is the culmination of a lifetime of commitment to your belief in one God, even when faced with certain death. The king's response is swift and furious. Enraged by his disobedience, Nebuchadnezzar orders that the furnace be heated 7 times more than usual, a verdict that seems to seal the fate of the 3 young men. And yet they stand firm, their faith unshaken to the end. What happens next is nothing short of a miracle. Thrown into the furnace, Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah not only survive, but are seen walking unharmed through the fire, accompanied by a 4th figure, described by Nebuchadnezzar as appearing a son of the gods. This miraculous event not only saves their lives, but also serves as a powerful testimony of their faith and divine protection. This story resonates through the centuries, not only as an account of miraculous survival, but as an inspiring example of faithfulness and courage in the face of overwhelming persecution. In ancient Babylon, under the reign of the mighty Nebuchadnezzar, an act of faith defies the limits of the possible and transforms what was a death sentence into a spectacular display of miracle and divine protection. This is the tale of Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah, 3 young men who, in the face of the king's uncompromising order to worship an immense golden statue, choose fidelity to his principles above life itself. But what happens when faith is tested by fire? The result is an episode that resonates for eternity, evidencing a miracle that defies all expectations. Imagine the scene: a fiery furnace, heated 7 times more than usual, ready to consume anything or anyone in its path. The sentence for Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah seems sealed. However, what happens inside those flames is something that no one could have predicted. Against all odds, these 3 young men not only survive, but are seen walking unharmed through the fire, accompanied by a mysterious figure describing such an impressive scene that even King Nebuchadnezzar himself is forced to recognize the power of the God they serve. This miracle in the furnace is not just a demonstration of faith, but a testimony to the power of divine protection. Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah emerge from the fire without a single singed hair, their clothes intact, without even the smell of fire on them. It is a scene that transcends the natural, challenging human logic and understanding, and that leaves all who witness, from the most skeptical to the king himself, in amazement and admiration. But what does this miraculous event tell us about faith, courage, and divine intervention? How can the story of 3 young people in an ancient civilization inspire and impact our lives today? The answer lies in the essence of the narrative itself, the unwavering belief that even in the most extreme circumstances, there is a greater force that can protect, guide, and deliver us. On a quiet night in Babylon, the sleep of the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar is once again invaded by an enigmatic dream, a mysterious glimpse that disturbs his peace and sows restlessness in his heart. This time, the vision is of an immense tree, whose crown touches the heavens and is visible to the ends of the earth, a wonder of nature that offers shelter and sustenance to all living beings. But then, a heavenly decree commands that the tree be cut down, leaving only the trunk and roots, an image as powerful as it is disturbing. This dream, full of symbolism and foreshadowing, would only find solution in the interpretive gifts of a man, Daniel. When Daniel is called to the king's presence to interpret this second dream, he is confronted not only with the challenge of deciphering its meaning, but also with the weight of the news it must bring. The grand tree, Daniel explains with a hesitation that reveals the depth of his loyalty and respect for the king, symbolizes Nebuchadnezzar himself, whose empire stretches across the heavens and offers protection to many. However, the order to cut down the tree carries a direct divine warning to the king. A period of humiliation will come upon Nebuchadnezzar, a time when he will be stripped of his throne and removed from men, living among the beasts of the field, until it recognizes that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever it desires. This moment of revelation is as intense as it is intimate, a truth that resonates with a dark clarity and bears the marks of a divine justice that aims not to destroy, but to transform. Daniel's interpretation of this dream and the subsequent events unfolding in Nebuchadnezzar's life are not only a testimony to Daniel's prophetic power, but also a profound lesson on sovereignty, pride, and redemption. It is a story that makes us question, how high can we grow before we forget where our strength and authority truly lie? In a dramatic twist worthy of the most epic tales of antiquity, the powerful figure of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, descends from his golden throne not by coup or war, but by an even more impressive fate: madness. This episode, prophesied by Daniel after interpreting a disturbing dream of the king, is not just a story about the fall of a ruler. It is a profound lesson on the sovereignty, humility, and capacity for redemption that resides in every human being. Imagine the scene: the greatest king of the earth, ruler of an empire that stretched across vast lands, walking barefoot under the open sky, the mind lost in delusions, more like the beasts of the field than the leader of men. This is not a fiction, but the reality lived by Nebuchadnezzar, whose pride and self-exaltation lead him to a state of alienation, where he is forced to live among animals, eating grass like an ox, until their hair grows like the feathers of eagles and their nails like the claws of birds. But what turns this narrative into something more than a simple story of fall and punishment is the process of restoration. Nebuchadnezzar's folly, though a direct fulfillment of divine prophecy, is not the end of the line for the king. It is, in fact, the beginning of a journey of self-knowledge and recognition of the true sovereignty of the Most High. This internal transformation is as remarkable as his physical and mental recovery. At the end of his probation period, something extraordinary happens. Nebuchadnezzar lifts his eyes to the heavens and his reason is restored to him. With this comes the understanding and acceptance that there is a greater power ruling over the kingdom of men, a power that can raise and lower kings according to their will. Nebuchadnezzar's restoration to the throne, then, is not only a return to power, but a spiritual rebirth, marked by a new understanding of humility and gratitude. In a night full of celebration and exuberance, the corridors of the Palace of Babylon resonate with the sound of laughter, the tinkling of bowls, and the excessive pride of a king who believed himself to be beyond the reach of destiny. This king is Belshazzar, whose arrogance leads him to challenge not only men but the divine. At the height of his boldness, he commits an act of unimaginable desecration. He uses the sacred vessels taken from the Temple of Jerusalem to toast his gods of gold and silver, despising the authority of the God of Israel. But amid the revelry, a mysterious sign appears: a hand that writes indecipherable words on the palace wall. This event, fraught with mystery and omen, marks the beginning of the end for Belshazzar and his kingdom. The writing on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsim, remains an enigma, a coded message that neither the sages nor the court soothsayers can interpret. The party gives way to fear, the music silences before the unknown, and Belshazzar, of unshakable sovereign, becomes a witness to his own impotence. It is in this climax of suspense and despair that Daniel is called to the palace, not as a guest of the feast but as an interpreter of destiny. With a serenity that contrasts with the tension of the environment, Daniel deciphers the mysterious writing, a divine sentence that heralds the end of Belshazzar's reign and the division of his empire between Medes and Persians. Mene, God counted the days of his reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you were weighed in the balance and found lacking. Parsim, your kingdom will be divided. With these words, Daniel not only reveals the meaning of the divine message, but also witnesses the impending fulfillment of a prophecy that would change the course of history. Belshazzar's fall is not just the end of a reign, but a powerful reminder that true sovereignty belongs to the divine, who raises and lowers kingdoms according to his will. This episode, rich in symbolism and eternal lessons, invites us to reflect on the transience of human power and the permanence of divine justice. In a kingdom where influence and power shape destinies, a story of loyalty, betrayal, and unwavering faith emerges. This is the saga of Daniel, under the reign of Darius the Fierce, a period that would witness not only Daniel's ascension to a position of great favor, but also the poisonous envy that this preference would arouse. This episode of Daniel's life is a dramatic tale of how virtue and integrity can incite both admiration and mortal grudge. Daniel, whose wisdom and integrity had already saved kingdoms and deciphered the mysteries of kings' dreams, is elevated to one of the highest positions in the kingdom of Darius. His unquestionable loyalty and ability to administer the affairs of the kingdom earned him the respect of the king, but also the hidden hatred of those around him. In this scenario of greed and conspiracy, the other rulers and satraps, corroded by envy, plot a cunning plan to overthrow Daniel. The plan is as simple as it is diabolical: to manipulate the king into issuing a decree that, unnoticed by Darius, would seal Daniel's fate. The decree forbids any petition to any god or man except the king for 30 days. A perfect trap for Daniel, whose faith and devotion to the God of Israel would prevent him from obeying such a law. Daniel's faith, like a flame that shines brighter under adversity, does not waver. Faced with the choice between adherence to the king's law and his unwavering devotion to God, Daniel chooses, without hesitation, to maintain his daily practice of prayer. His disobedience to the royal decree is quickly and secretly reported to the king by those who envy him, and Darius, imprisoned by the very law he signed, is forced to order Daniel to be cast into the lion's den. What follows is a night of anguish for the king and a trial of faith for Daniel. The lion's den, a sure death sentence for any man, becomes the stage of one of the most extraordinary miracles in the Bible. Daniel, surrounded by beasts, is under divine protection, a powerful demonstration that true faith is never alone, even before the abyss. This story, rich in drama and emotion, is not only a testimony to Daniel's loyalty and faith, but also a reminder of divine justice that transcends human machinations. In an ancient kingdom where the law of the strongest ruled and faith was often put to the test, a story emerges that challenges the laws of nature and human power. This is the saga of the deliverance of Daniel, a man of unwavering faith, from the den of lions. In an episode that seems torn from the pages of an epic tale, we find Daniel, the victim of a conspiracy driven by envy, thrown into a pit full of ferocious lions, a fate that, for any other, would be the end. But what happens next is a demonstration of faith and divine protection so powerful it echoes through the centuries. Imagine the scene. The darkness of the night envelops the grave, where hungry lions await their next victim. Daniel is cast among these beasts not for a crime he committed, but for his unbreakable devotion to a God he refuses to renounce. King Darius's decree, although reluctantly signed, is irrevocable, and even he, a powerful monarch, feels powerless to save his faithful servant. However, what could be Daniel's tragic end turns into an impressive miracle. Despite everyone's expectations, at dawn, Daniel is found alive, without a scratch, surrounded by lions who, against all nature, have done him no harm. But how can that be? How does a man, alone and unarmed, survive an entire night in the presence of wild lions? The answer is found not in human logic, but in the faith that Daniel possesses. His divine protection in the lion's den is not only a testimony of his personal faith, but a powerful demonstration of the care of a God who saves those who dedicate themselves to him. This miraculous event leads King Darius himself to proclaim the sovereignty of the God of Daniel, recognizing that he is the living God who abides forever. This episode is not just a survival story. It is a lesson about the power of faith, the reality of divine protection, and the ability of a true miracle to transform hearts and minds. In an ancient world filled with mysteries and wonders, visions emerge that would transcend time. Prophecies of a distant future revealed to a man whose faith and wisdom were as vast as the empires he served. This man is Daniel, a captive taken to Great Babylon, who would become one of the most reliable counselors of kings and empires. But among the many miracles and challenges of his life, nothing is as mysterious and fascinating as the prophetic visions given to him, visions that would outline the course of human history and the empires that would rise and fall. Imagine yourself in ancient Babylon, where Daniel, in moments of deep divine communion, receives visions of 4 great beasts emerging from the sea, each representing empires that would rule the earth in different eras. From the first beast, like a lion with eagle's wings, to the terrible 4th beast, with iron teeth and 10 horns. Daniel's visions unfold a panorama of the rise and fall of empires, from Babylon to kingdoms still unknown to him. But Daniel's visions go beyond simply predicting conquests and defeats. They speak of an eternal kingdom, not built by human hands, that would arise after the fall of these great empires, a kingdom of justice and peace that would never be destroyed. Daniel sees one as the Son of Man, coming in the clouds of heaven, to whom is given dominion, glory, and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and tongues would serve. These visions, rich in symbolism and meaning, not only establish Daniel as one of the greatest prophets of his time, but also offer an eternal hope that transcends earthly struggles and empires. They remind us of the transience of human power and the promise of a divine kingdom of eternal peace and justice. Join us as we delve into the depths of these prophetic visions, exploring the meaning of the symbols, the interpretation of the prophecies, and how Daniel's revelations relate not only to his time, but also to the future of humanity. This is a journey through time, from the empires of antiquity to the promises of a redemptive future, a story that speaks to the heart of our search for meaning, hope, and an eternal destiny. In an age of colossal empires and battles that decide the fate of nations, a prophetic vision emerges so vivid and detailed that it transcends its time, anticipating conflicts that would shape the course of history. This is the story of Daniel's vision of the ram and the goat, a celestial enigma that reveals the titanic clash between the Medo-Persian and Greek empires, a struggle for dominance that would echo through the centuries. Imagine yourself in a scenario where the ancient world is at a turning point, with great powers rising and falling. Daniel, in his vision, sees a ram with 2 long horns representing the kings of Media and Persia, imposing and challenging, dominating the west, north, and south without anyone being able to oppose him. But then from the west, a goat with a remarkable horn appears between the eyes, symbol of the king of Greece, advancing with an uncontrollable fury against the ram, in a collision of forces that would determine the future of empires. The struggle is intense and decisive. The goat, representing the speed and aggressiveness of the Greek campaigns under Alexander the Great, attacks with such impetuousness that the ram has no chance to resist. The horn of the goat breaks the horns of the ram, subduing the Medo-Persian Empire and establishing Greek rule. However, at the height of his power, the great horn of the goat is broken, symbolizing Alexander's premature death and the subsequent division of his empire among his generals. This prophetic episode, more than a prediction of military confrontations, is a reminder of the transience of human power and divine sovereignty that governs the destinies of nations. Daniel's vision, rich in symbolism and meaning, invites us to reflect on the lessons of history, on the rise and fall of empires, and on the promise of a greater power that guides the course of human events. In an age of empires and prophets, amid the whirlwind of events that shaped ancient history, a revelation is delivered to Daniel, a message so profound and mysterious that its echoes would resound through the centuries, heralding a divine plan of redemption and hope. This is the story of the revelation of the 70 weeks, a prophecy delivered by the angel Gabriel to Daniel, outlining a heavenly calendar that would lead to final redemption. Imagine yourself in ancient Babylon, where Daniel, seeking understanding and mercy for his people, is visited by Gabriel, a divine messenger, who comes to offer a vision of the future that transcends immediate understanding. The 70 weeks, divided into segments of 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and 1 last week, are presented not only as periods of time, but as stages of a meticulously orchestrated divine plan. The prophecy begins with the order to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, a sign of hope for an exiled people. This period, symbolized by the initial 7 weeks, marks the beginning of a countdown to redemption. It follows 62 weeks, during which the city would be rebuilt in times of adversity, until the coming of an anointed, a messianic figure whose appearance would signal the nearness of the final fulfillment of the prophecy. But it is in the last week that the mystery of prophecy deepens. This period is marked by a pact, and in its half a dramatic breach of that agreement, leading to sacrifices and offerings that would cease. This moment of betrayal and loss signals a time of tribulation, but it also foreshadows the final divine intervention, a purification and sanctification that would establish eternal justice. The 70-week revelation is more than a prophecy about times and events. It is a message of hope and redemption, promising that, despite tribulations and challenges, there is a divine plan in motion, guiding human history to a final outcome of peace and justice. It is a promise that in the end God's sovereignty will prevail, bringing restoration not only to Jerusalem, but to all creation. At a time when the veil of the future was as impenetrable as the walls of ancient cities, there arises a prophetic vision, revealed to Daniel, that would transcend centuries, a narrative about future conflicts and the final judgment that would determine the fate of humanity. This vision, complex and full of symbols, presents an epic drama between the kings of the north and the kings of the south, a clash that would echo through time, culminating in a final confrontation where true justice would be established. Imagine yourself transported to ancient times, where empires collide in battles that decide the course of history. Daniel, in his vision, witnesses the rise and fall of kings, an endless cycle of conflict and ambition that serves as a prelude to an even more significant event. The disputes between the kings of the north and south are more than mere territorial wars. They symbolize the spiritual and moral struggles that permeate human existence, a representation of the eternal battle between good and evil. But it is at the end of Daniel's vision that the narrative takes on an even more dramatic tone. He is taken to a time of unprecedented anguish where Michael, the great prince who protects the children of your people, stands up in a definitive act of liberation and justice. This period, marked by tribulations never seen before, is also a prelude to the final judgment, a moment where each soul would be heavy and the destinies decided. The vision culminates in the resurrection of the dead, some to eternal life and others to eternal shame and contempt. It is a revelation that speaks of redemption and condemnation, of hope and despair, and of the establishment of a kingdom of righteousness that will never be destroyed. This prophetic vision not only provides a window into future events, but also offers a profound reflection on the nature of divine justice and the ultimate destiny of the world. In an ancient world filled with divine mysteries and earthly riddles, Daniel's visions unfold like a rug woven with the threads of human and divine destiny. After witnessing rising and falling empires, conflicts shaping the future and divine promises that transcend time, Daniel stands on the threshold between vision and reality, between knowing what is to come and faith in what is eternal. His final reflections are not only an epilogue of his prophetic experiences, but a message of hope and redemption that echoes through the ages. Imagine yourself beside Daniel as he contemplates the panorama of human and divine history, a panorama full of challenges, but also of unwavering promises. After receiving visions that reveal from the rise and fall of empires to the final judgment and promise of resurrection, Daniel finds himself in a unique position, balancing the weight of knowledge with the lightness of faith. The promise of resurrection in particular marks a turning point in his reflections. It is not just a conclusion of all the visions and prophecies revealed to him, it is the essence of eternal hope. The resurrection, the promise of a life beyond death, a justice that restores and redeems, a new creation where pain and death no longer exist, offers a glimpse of a reality transformed by divine grace. For Daniel, and for all of us who follow his stories, that promise is the anchor that sustains faith amid the storms of life. In a world where suffering and injustice often seem to prevail, the promise of resurrection is a reminder that the end of history is still being written, that there is a greater plan at work, a plan that culminates not in destruction but in restoration and eternal life. Recognizing the depth of this journey of faith and the ongoing search for guidance, strength, and fellowship with the sacred, we have something special to share with you. In the first comment fixed below, you will find a valuable resource for all who wish to deepen their spiritual walk. We're talking about an ebook designed to accompany you through 52 weeks, offering in-depth reflections, daily practices, and prayers, all inspired by the rich stories and biblical teachings we've traveled through together. This ebook is not just a guide, but a companion in your journey of faith, helping to illuminate your path with insights and inspirations derived from the heart of the Bible. If you seek a deeper experience of faith, guidance in your moments of doubt, strength in adversity, and a closer communion with the divine, this resource is for you. We invite you to explore it and allow these reflections to guide your steps in the spiritual journey that unites us all. I will leave a suggested video about the story of Elisha, one of the most influential and inspiring prophets. This video not only chronicles Elisha's remarkable achievements, but also delves into the spiritual lessons and impact his life had on those around him. If you seek depth and inspiration from the scriptures, this video will surely enrich your understanding and connection with these millennial teachings. I'll see you in a few seconds.